Okay, now Sports Central, we go over our next schedule preview of this offseason, and it's going to be for the Auburn Tigers, team that went 6-7 overall in the 2021 season. It was a tough season for Auburn. This was a team that took a lot of close losses last season. Their finishing record was 6-7, but I feel like this team definitely was talented enough to have a better record than 6-7. But in the end, those close losses really made an impact. But how this team be in 2022, that's what we'll be going over here today. We'll be going over the players this team will be losing, will they be returning, and also looking at their schedule for the first time this offseason, starting out with their notable games from last season. And you can already see the 3 losses on your notable games were all close ones. You lost to Penn State by 8 on the road. You lost to Alabama by 2. That game went into 4 overtimes. And you lost to Houston by 4 in your bowl games. So, I mean, that Alabama loss in particular, I'm sure that was a tough one. I mean, if you beat Alabama there, that's a massive win for Auburn. I mean, over your rival and over a national contender in Alabama. But in the end, came up short. And for that Houston game, I mean, that was a very winnable game for Auburn there against Houston. But in the end, the Cougars got the win by 4. But on the flip side, you beat LSU there on the road, 24-19. That was a big win, beating Arkansas as well on the road, 38-23. Beat Arkansas by 15. I mean, Arkansas, that was a good team last season. And you also beat Ole Miss, 31-20. So you can see this team had some good wins last year. I mean, it's kind of surprising seeing this team at 6-7, considering the talent that they had. Plus, I mean, beating LSU, Arkansas, Ole Miss, and the way that they did was definitely impressive. But once again, those close losses, you lost to South Carolina by 4, you lost to Mississippi State by 9. So, I mean, you can see, I mean, this team, they were close to being an at least 8-win team, potentially even 9. But once again, the close losses really made an impact. First 6 games, they were 4-2. Last 7, they were 2-5. So they were 2-5 in their last 7. They lost all of their last 5 games. Roster preview going into next season, this team has got several significant changes. Bo Nix transferring out to Oregon, but you got Zach Calzada coming in from Texas A&M, which I'm sure there's mixed feelings about that. Zach Calzada at Texas A&M, he was a decent quarterback last season, nothing too crazy. So we'll see how he does going into next season, whether he improves or not, which is going to be something to keep an eye on. And of course, Bo Nix last season was the primary starting quarterback, putting up 2,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, 3 picks. So, I mean, his stats were they weren't excellent. I mean, he put up a 61% completion rate as well. So, I mean, it was nothing too terribly impressive out of Bo Nix last season. And of course, if you look at the quarterback situation, I mean, you got of course Zach Calzada coming in, then TJ Finley. Don't forget about him. TJ Finley, I mean, he's definitely, I feel like, I mean, he's got upside. I'm looking forward to seeing how he does going into next season in that quarterback situation. Obviously, you got TJ Finley, Zach Calzada, both of them likely your top 2. I feel like TJ Finley, though, I mean, we didn't see him too much last season. 800 yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 pick, 55% completion rate when he played. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Certainly, I think there's potential in the quarterback position, but definitely a couple uncertainties as well. Running back situation looks good. You got Tank Bigsby coming back. You also got Jarquez Hunter. So the backfield looks good for this team. You got Bigsby, who put up over 1,200 yards of offense, 10 touchdowns, and then Hunter put up over 650 and 4 touchdowns. Backfield looks good. Quarterback situation, I think, will be okay. The receiving position, you do lose a couple. Kobe Hudson is transferring out. Last season, he put up over 580 yards, 4 touchdowns, and then Shedrick Jackson, your second wideout, he's coming back. So that'll be a big return there. He put up over 500 yards. You do lose your third receiver there, and Robertson, though. So the receiving core, you're losing a couple, but when you get the backfield, and I mean, I feel like this Auburn team definitely offensively, there's potential here. I mean, there's upside for sure. You lose one on the offensive line, so offensive line looks somewhat decent. You'll have some good experience going into next season. You lose 2 on the defensive line, 2 linebackers, and then 3 in the secondary. So defensively, you do lose a decent amount of players there. You lose 2 on the D-line, and then, of course, 3 in the secondary is obviously not the best thing either. But, yeah, offense definitely is upside. Defense is a bit questionable. But how high is the ceiling now for Auburn going into next season? I mean, this is a team that certainly I feel like the SEC is such a brutal conference. I mean, for some teams, I mean, you can be a good team in the SEC and only get 6 or 7 wins. And that's kind of what I think Auburn was last season. They were a good team, a talented team, but they just, when it came down to it, they couldn't get those wins in close games. But Going into next season, I feel like this team, I mean, they're not going to win the SEC. I can't imagine they would. But, I mean, I feel like this team, I'm optimistic about them. I do feel like, 9-10 wins is not out of the question if you're talking about a ceiling here. But the schedule, though, we'll get into that in a second, but it is tough for the Tigers going into next season. Transfer portal and recruiting, of course, you got Bo Nix headed off to Oregon. You got Zach Calzada coming in from Texas A&M. You got a tight end who's off to Ole Miss. You're losing several players to the transfer portal. You're bringing in a couple, but you're losing a lot to Rode Torrance, defensive back. We don't know where he's going yet, but he's in the transfer portal. Of course, Kobe Hudson, mentioned him. He's off to UCF. And then you got Jason Jones coming in, defensive lineman from Oregon. Dre Butler, defensive lineman, going to Liberty. And then Height, linebacker, going to USC. Recruiting-wise, doesn't look terrible. 20th nationally, 9th in the SEC. I mean, the SEC is just outstanding this year. Once again, when it comes to recruiting, I mean, Auburn's number 9 in the SEC, yet 20th in the nation, which is, that's pretty insane. We got 10 4-stars coming in, then 8 3-stars. So recruiting doesn't look terrible for this team. Transfer portal, you do lose a couple of players as well, but overall, I feel like the depth will be okay on this team. They got some good experience. I mean, they were a younger team last year, so we'll see how that ages going into next season. But now looking at your schedule, this is where things get tough going into next season. You got Mercer and San Jose State to start off the season. 2 games that you should take care of for sure, but then you got Penn State coming to town. You played them on the road last year, but now you got Penn State coming to the home stadium this fall. And obviously Penn State they're going to be a good team next season. I do expect them to be a contender in the Big Ten East. I don't know if they'll win the division, but they should be good. Then you got Missouri. That's also at home. They got LSU at home. So actually, you're at home for your first 5 games. You're not on the road until the Georgia game on October 8th. You got Georgia on the road, Ole Miss on the road. Then you got Arkansas coming to town, Mississippi State on the road, Texas A&M at home, then Western Kentucky at home before playing Alabama on the road to finish out the season. This is a brutal schedule. You got to play Georgia on the road. You got to play Alabama on the road. Ole Miss is going to be good. Arkansas is going to be good. Texas A&M is going to be a national contender. Mississippi State, they're usually pretty good, and you got to face them on the road. LSU could be decent. You're playing. This is one of the toughest schedules that I've seen up until this point this offseason. Penn State, as one of your non-conference games, they're going to be good next season. One of the better teams in the Big Ten, probably. So, it's a tough schedule for Auburn, and this team they've faced some tough schedules in the past, but this one is definitely going to be. It's going to be tough for them, that's for sure. But looking at the first half here, Mercer, San Jose State should take care of both of those games. I'm heavily favoring Auburn in both of those. Penn State coming to town. I'll favor the Tigers there against Penn State. I feel like with it being at home for Auburn, I feel like they should be just fine. That's pretty much a coin toss, though. Both teams are very capable of winning that game. Then you got Missouri. I'll favor Auburn there as well, and same thing with LSU. So I've actually got you favored in your first 5 games. Penn State, Missouri, LSU. There's a chance that you lose at least one of those, but LSU, they could be decent next year. Missouri, not expecting too much out of them. But Penn State, that'll probably be the toughest of your first 5, I would assume. But I feel like Auburn gets it done this year and gets the win against Penn State. Georgia on the road, pretty comfortable picking Georgia in that one. The Bulldogs should once again be pretty good next season. I wouldn't be surprised to see them as a national contender. They probably won't be quite as good as they were in 2021. I don't see them winning a national title, but they should still be good going into next season. They got some key returners. So I'll favor Georgia there. Look at the second half of your schedule. It does not get any easier. You got Ole Miss on the road. That one is one that I feel like Auburn could definitely win. Ole Miss probably won't be as good next season either. They're losing Matt Corral and a few other guys as well. So, but I'm going to favor the Rebels there because you're coming off of a tough road game to Georgia, and you got to turn around and go to Ole Miss, who's already they should be a good team. So I'll favor the Rebels there. Arkansas coming to town. That's a home game. Razorbacks, they're going to be good next year yet again. If you thought they were good in 2021, they could be even better in 2022. I'm going to favor Arkansas there. It's going to be close. With it also being a home game, that makes it tougher to pick Arkansas, but I'll favor the Razorbacks there right now. Mississippi State on the road, that's also tough. I feel like the second half of the season here, it's so tough on Auburn. It's week after week. You just got brutal games, and I feel like they kind of take a skid here in the middle of the season. Mississippi State on the road. I'm going to take the Bulldogs there, but I do think Auburn's the more talented team in that matchup. Texas A&M at home. Aggies, yeah, this is a tough schedule. I think the Aggies are going to be a national contender next year. They got some great players and lots of talent, lots of upsides. So I'm going to pick the Aggies there. Western Kentucky, that's the one game in your last 7 games that is definitely one that I'm comfortable picking Auburn there. And even Western Kentucky is not terrible. And then you got Alabama to finish out the season on the road. I'll favor Alabama in that one for sure. So record projection 6-6 to 9-3. I think 6-6 for the floor is actually pretty optimistic. I feel like 5-7 could be the floor. 9-3 is the ceiling. I'm pretty comfortable picking 9-3 as the ceiling here, considering how many tough games you got. I feel like they're going to lose at least 3. I mean, Georgia and Alabama are 2 that I'm already pretty comfortable picking there, and then a third one is definitely, I feel like, probably a good bet. But yeah, record projection 6-6 to 9-3 for this team. I feel like this team's got potential. They got talent, but it's a tough schedule, and I feel like that's what's going to come down to. SEC, just a brutal conference. But let me know your thoughts and comments below on this Auburn team, and I appreciate you guys are watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.